My Gavanan and well met. I am Arachír Galudirithon, head of the Submod Divide and Conquer, and welcome to the faction overview for Lothlórien, the Golden Wood. This follows on from the other Wood Elves video I did of Thranduil's realm in the north of Mirkwood. And now we will round off our Wood Elf experience with the folk of Lórien. This is how the game begins for Lórien, with the two provinces, only the two, Caer Amroth and Caras Galadhrim. City of the treefolk. Caras Galadhrim is a very large city, huge city, large as it can be, whereas Caer Amroth can still be upgraded to a city and then beyond. However, you do only start with those two. You do get a spy, as you can see there, Cofneben, sorry. And other than that, nothing really to say. You've got Lord Celeborn with 2 units of basic Lórien units and High March Warden, Haldir, with a unit of archers. And that is the game start for Lothlórien. Making only 909 with your units still in your castle, so not particularly wealthy at the beginning of the game. But right, so this is how you start, and you're going to look to obviously expand straight away. And the locations that you can go immediately are to your south, to the castle of Harnrain, or... oh no, I renamed it, sorry, Draichan. This used to be called Harnrain, and this used to be called Foradrain or Fornrain. But anyway, that's now a Draichan, and you can head south and take that castle there. And then that allows you to keep watch, as it were, over the forces of Isengard should they become a little stronger on Rohan. Additionally, the province of Western Wold, which is just here, that doesn't get auto-claimed by Rohan at the beginning, so you can continue pushing south and take Western Wold, and then you're even closer to the action if Isengard take Dunlostir, which is this large region here. So you can head south, or alternatively you can push east and beat Dol Guldur to the small village that populates the it's sort of the bowels of Mirkwood. As the tree line thins, there's a village in the wastes there, and you can take that and then move north to Dol Guldur. But those are your only rebel expansion provinces. As you can see, you're bordered on the west by the dwarves of Khazad-dûm, Moria. To the north, you're bordered by the Vale of Anduin, and then pretty soon Dol Guldur will be knocking on your door too. Now, in terms of diplomacy, you are only allied to the dwarves of Khazad-dûm. That is to ensure that the dwarves don't attack you through the system when you play the dwarves of Khazad-dûm as the humans. You're allied to Lórien so that there aren't any issues around Lórien attacking you or anything like that. So you start allied to the dwarves of Khazad-dûm, and you are already at war with Dol Guldur, Shadow of Mirkwood, and the Orcs of the Misty Mountains. But that is it. Otherwise, the world is your oyster. You may note that you do not start allied to Thranduil, and as I said in that video, that will come into play when I talk about the scripts for Lórien. Right, the construction, you're an elven faction, so as with all elven factions, you can't upgrade castles. So if you do take a Draichan, it will stay as a wooden castle for the rest of the game. Other than that, you don't really have any restrictions, and your building options are remarkably similar to Thranduil's. You get the plant preservation as well, the Gwaith Iarúnthin, and you also get a warriors guild. That's exactly the same that Thranduil gets. There's a dance guild as well, which improves your archers and general experience. Warriors guild gives you a sword bonus and then general experience, and the plant preservation gives you some income and some population growth bonuses. And that's it. Otherwise you don't really get any restrictions. As I say, you don't get a bank or anything like that, but you are one of the few factions who get what is it? The theatre and the conservatorium, which just improves happiness. Sorry, do excuse me. Right, the scripts that involve Lórien. First of all, we'll talk about the garrison script, as I try to do now in each video. The garrison, as you are an elven faction, will only spring forth from Caras Galadhrim. You will not get a garrison in Caer Amroth, and nor will you get a garrison anywhere else. As the elves, you will only get a garrison in your capital and the 3 other capitals of the elves, so Mithlond, Imladris, and Thranduil's halls, and they are the only places you'll get a garrison. So you can't rely on the garrison. The only other script that affects Lórien is the Elven Alliance script. Now, do watch the Thranduil video for the detailed, in-depth analysis of that. But all it is essentially is as soon as you ally with Thranduil, then a number of turns will then have to pass. You do have to be a bit patient. Some turns will pass, and then you'll get a message saying that there's an army on its way. A messenger from Thranduil brings this information to you, and then you get the option to say to summon forth some troops, and they will join you in your capital, whereupon an army from Dol Guldur, I think from Mordor actually, then besieges your capital and attacks you. You can say no to these troops if you don't have the money, because when the battle ends, if you win, of course, you might not win, but when the battle ends, the army that you spawned with your existing troops will stay in the game, so you'll get all their upkeep added to your upkeep. So it can be a costly way, but it is also a great way of getting 6 or 7, I can't remember how many, free units essentially. But then once you've defeated off the little attack, you then begin talks with Thranduil about forming a more permanent alliance, and if you agree to that, which you're very silly to not agree to that, because currently there are no bonuses, as I mentioned in the Thranduil one. There's no bonuses if you say no, so do say yes. And then it gives you the option to build an alliance training camp, and you'll get a few units from Thranduil that fill the gap of units that you have. So I think you get some of their archers because they've got better archers, and you get a few of their strike infantry because Lothlórien are far more defensive than Thranduil. So it's a very good, it's an interesting little script. It's nothing too major, but it's quite fun, and it gives you a few Thranduil units to add to your own roster, which will look even better when we get the elven units from the Hobbit added to Thranduil. Alright, Lothlórien in terms of tips or difficulty, there aren't really any tips with Lothlórien, save for the fact that you're elves, so use your archers. Always use your archers. Other than that, try and take Dol Guldur as soon as you can. The elves are a very, very easy faction. As I always say, that the 4 easiest factions in the game, I would say hands down, are the elves. Lothlórien, the 2 wood elves are slightly harder than the high elves because their units aren't as good, but it could be said that actually the wood elves are better because your archers are phenomenal and you get a lot more of them, and you're quite a lot cheaper than the high elves. But I can't really give you any tips, I'm afraid. I always go for Dol Guldur almost straight away, or often if you play as Lothlórien, the first invasion will be called against Caras Galadhrim, and if your computer can handle it, because unfortunately, if you're attacked by say 4 full banner armies and you've got a reasonably low-end PC, you might find that the game freezes, which some users have reported, and unfortunately that is just down to the hardware because the game's quite old. It doesn't utilize the maximum firepower that many computers nowadays have. So sometimes it can be a bit of a pain upgrading your computer, only to find that some old games now struggle. But anyway, that's by the by. Caras Galadhrim is likely to be the first invasion, so it can be quite fun just defending your capital. I say it's quite fun. The battle map is incredibly good fun because Caras Galadhrim is on the top of a very high hill. There's only one way into the city, which you can absolutely bottleneck the enemy there using your garrison unit, because obviously they're throwaway. You don't care about them. And then you can have your archers all around the hill just peppering the enemy as they come. I've won numerous heroic victories, outnumbered 3 or 4 to 1 versus Harad, Mordor, Khand and Umbar all invaded me. And sometimes I only won by the absolute skin of my teeth, but it is really good fun. But once the invasion passes, you have virtually no threats, because Dol Guldur will be tied up with the Vale of Anduin, and likely Thranduil as well, so they will probably leave you alone. Unless you really completely leave them alone, then you'll find that they come across the river by the thousands once they start getting a foothold. So it's ideal to start peppering Dol Guldur. And with the forces that you can train at the beginning and the forces that you already start with, you can actually push straight for Dol Guldur and take it almost immediately. But it does have a very large garrison script, so it can be trickier than it first appears. And anyway, so that is the campaign side of Lothlórien. Now we'll take a look at the custom battle, the armies of Lothlórien. If it appears that I'm speaking slightly faster, it's because unfortunately with the last video, the Thranduil one, was 40 minutes long, but I must have moved the camera around too much or something. But the file size was astronomical, and it took my computer, or my upload, it took my internet connection something like 4.5 hours to upload the video, whereas normally they take between half an hour and an hour. So it must have just been a bad day on my end, but I'm trying to just do the overviews rather than and try and cut down on the fluff, is what I would call it, the intermittent talk. But right, a quick overview of Lothlórien gives you almost an identical look as Thranduil, except you have a few less archers. Again, you have hardly any cavalry, but you'll also notice you've got quite a grey army, which is in keeping with the description of Lothlórien, which is that the Malorn trees have grey bark, so the elves of Lothlórien dress in grey to camouflage with their homeland. There are a few exceptions, namely the middle tier units of Yavanna's Chosen and the Sentinels of Kerin Amroth, and your elites still have the golden armour with grey-blue cloaks that you will know from the films, because the films do give good inspiration for designs. Alright, let's line everyone up. Apologies if I get one or two units wrong, but the feel of these videos is just the idea of these videos, sorry. It's just to give you a rough overview of what your units will look like and what they're capable of. It's the cavalry, I don't know where the cavalry come into it. But again, like Thranduil, there's only really 3 tiers. What are we looking at there? 8, total defense 15, total defense 15, 16. Oh, so they come in at the same time. I would suggest that they, are first tier. Alright, so this is the makeup of the Lórien faction. This is what your troops, this is how they fall. The only one that's kind of halfway in between, potentially, are the Girthinen, which means silent death, if you are interested. They have a very, very high attack stat, and they frighten nearby enemy infantry, and they can hide anywhere, but they've got a pretty poor defense, so they're not, strictly speaking, they're not second tier units. They are more sort of there, but it's just obviously easier to have them in the line there. But anyway, as the major feel of Thranduil are defensive, so not Thranduil, sorry, Lothlórien. So all the elves were sort of redone a little while back for 0.5, and Thranduil was given the more aggressive side of the elves, and Lothlórien was given the more defensive nature. So against other factions you're still incredibly strong all across the board, but against Thranduil and the High Elves you'll note that Lothlórien can hold their ground a lot longer, whereas Thranduil will bring down the enemy a lot quicker. And this is reflected in your troops from the very beginning. So, oh sorry, that was very, very fast. So your starting unit are Lórien Spearmen and Lórien Sentries and Lórien Archers. These are your 3 base units. The Sentries are the aggressive side, obviously, the Spearmen are the defensive, and the Archers are the Archers. So straight in with a defense of 16, which is good, very, very good. Obviously that's an Elven militia starting style. Most militia units start at around between 5 and 10, and the Elves start at about 15. So you know straight away, even your base units are going to surpass other units of their tier. All elves are adept at hiding in woods, that goes without saying. And also, most elves have reasonably good morale for their tier. So a unit of this tier would usually have low or poor morale, whereas they have quite good morale, reflected in good morale. You get a bonus in forest and snow, and you get a negative effect in the desert, and that's true of all elves as well. So there's the stats of the sentries, an 8 attack and a 4 charge, which is nothing to scoff at. Next up are the spearmen. Obviously these are very good against cavalry. They've got a better defense, as you can see, but not as good attack, but the same charge because they are just the same sort of elves. Skilled against mounts, as I say, because they're spearmen, that's what you'd expect, but they get an extra bonus versus the Nazgul, the horses of the Nazgul. So they're this particular unit are, whilst good against all cavalry, are also particularly good against the Nazgul. And now, the elves, where the elves shine are in your archer units. Oh, sorry, who are the ones that selected in the middle here? Your elven archers have a missile attack of 8. Now, if you saw the Thranduil video, you would have heard me going on about how incredibly strong that is. But rest assured that is phenomenally good. Elite humans tend to have between 7 and 9 archer, and your militia level archers start at 8. So already you're going to be doing very, very well. You can use sharpened stakes. They've got a melee of 7, which is very, very good, when the sentries have a melee of 8. So even when they've stopped firing, they're reliable attacking troops. But as you can see from their defense only being 11, they're not going to last as long in melee as the sentries would. But you can certainly use them toward the end of the battle when the spearmen are holding the line, and your archers can then flank round the sides in opportune moments and take the enemy unawares. The entire mounted division of Lórien rests in 2 unit types. The Lórien Lancers, he looks like he has an earring, but he doesn't, he just has, it's just the sun on his head. And the Lórien scouts. Now, these are quite simply just a standard cavalry unit and a cavalry archer. So the archer, missile attack of 7, not as good as the standard militia, but obviously they're cavalry. Similar sort of defense, but a bit better because they have a shield once they begin fighting. And their melee is also 8, so similar to the sentries. Or the same as the sentries, sorry. But they've got the charge bonus reminiscent of a cavalry unit. These can also form a Cantabrian circle, so they can form the shooting circle, which is useful against enemy orcs, as they are quite slow. High accuracy as you'd expect of the elves. Reasonably good missiles count and a range of 140. Now your Lórien Lancers have a very, very good charge, but not particularly wonderful initial attack, but their secondary attack is very good. So these, once they've done their initial charge, which is going to do a lot of damage, these are kind of just mounted sentries. Same sort of attack stat, but ever so slightly better, but the same defense, and they've got a shield, and so that they're strike cavalry, they're not prolonged melee cavalry. For the elves, it's important to note that everything that I say in the elven videos is only relative to elven factions. So when I say that unit isn't really a prolonged melee cavalry unit, that's compared to other elven cavalry. Compared to just other units in the game, this unit is phenomenally good in melee, and you can use them in prolonged melee. But I try and keep the elves all relevant together, because otherwise you're basically just saying, look how amazing this unit is, look how amazing this unit is, look how amazing this unit is. So you try and play them off against each other so that you can see that some have some weaknesses and some have bonuses elsewhere. So do bear that in mind when I say if a unit is good or bad at something. And right, the middle tier between 1 and 2, the Girthanen, Silent Death. These live up to their name, they can hide anywhere. Jet black, or not jet black, sorry, grey all over, and dual wielded swords. They have a very high attack stat, not a particularly wonderful charge, but they frighten nearby enemy infantry and they can hide anywhere, which means that when they launch their surprise attack and they appear from the grass, they will cause a huge morale hit to the enemy. That's their biggest strength. And then next to that is that then they can get quite a good charge in with a phenomenal attack. So they can scare the enemy and then do a lot of damage amongst the enemy's ranks. They also have very good morale, which is keeps them in battle for quite some time, but their defense is quite poor, so you do have to keep an eye on them. They're quite a niche little unit, and you have to learn how to use them quite well, but the fun in learning how to use the unit is to play with them. But certainly use them on the flanks of your army and then surprise key enemy positions and charge them. They'll make short work of any enemy, but if they get surrounded or grouped, they will fall like flies, so you have to micromanage with them, unfortunately. Alright, on to Tier 2. These are available after the Barracks event. You have got the Sentinels of Caer Amroth, Yavanna's Chosen, and the Rangers of Lothlórien. It's also worth noting at this point that almost all units of Lothlórien, excluding the top tier, get an armor upgrade look when they upgrade their armor. So when you upgrade their armor at the blacksmith, there will be a visual change to the unit. Sometimes it's only slight, but there is still a change. Right, so at this tier, again, you've got similar sort of vein, a spear style unit, an attacking style unit, and an archer. So we'll start with the Sentinels of Caer Amroth. Those, even though they're called of Caer Amroth, they are available everywhere. Very good morale. This defense is starting to get very respectable. For a tier 2 unit, 22 is very, very good. And a very high attack, the same as the Girthanen, but not as good charge. So what these lack is they can't hide anywhere, and they don't scare the enemy, but they've got a better morale to make up for that, a better defense to make up for that. So the Girthanen will strike and attack the enemy, but the Sentinels of Caer Amroth will keep the enemy hunkered down and will take a lot of hits before they go down. They got pretty cool elven swords and bronze style shields. Next up, Yavanna's Chosen. This unit is one that I'm particularly fond of naming, so do have a little read of the description of them. They can do a Shiltrum, which is very rare for spear units. Most spear units go into shield wall instead of Shiltrum. But that just means they can't be flanked, but it does cut down on their effectiveness, so you have to use it. If your back's against the wall is the only time you tend to use Shiltrum. They are adept at hiding in woods, and as you'd expect, they're good against cavalry, but they've only got a good morale, not a very good, so you do have to be cautious. They're not going to stay on the field as long as the Sentinels, or the Girthanen for that matter. However, they are essentially a pike unit, so they are remarkably strong. They're a spear unit, but a two-handed spear unit, so they go between a spear and a pike. Defense is 20, which is very respectable. No shield, obviously, so they're susceptible to arrow fire. But they've an attack of 10 is very, very good for a unit that keeps the enemy at bay. So you do have to bear in mind that most enemies won't be able to get to them to attack them. So they've got a huge advantage there. And finally, you get the Rangers of Lothlórien. Now, with that, if any unit is ever called a Ranger, then you can rest assured that they have stats to correlate with that. Stats to go along with that. So, Rangers will have an incredible range, 230, the second highest range of any unit. Second only to the Hûdoll of Thranduil's Realm. Their accuracy is exceptional, which means they're virtually pinpoint, very good morale. But here's where they are let down. As you can see, their defense is only 13. That's worse than your starting units, your starting militia, save your starting archers. But their missile attack is 11 to compensate for that, which is incredibly high. Second highest, again, as I say, with the best being 12. Their melee is very good as well at 9, but their charge isn't really anything to speak of. So, as with all archers, you really have to think it through before you charge archers into battle. They can use stakes and they can hide anywhere, which gives them a great advantage over the enemy, because you can hide them on the sides and then essentially snipe key targets. Right, the final tier of Lothlórien are the 3 heavily armoured units equivalent to Thranduil's, but with more defence rather than attack. Your bodyguard, and then the unique unit Galadhrim March Wardens. So we'll start with the 3 main. Elbereth Swordman. There's Elbereth Swordman, Elbereth Guardsman, and Elbereth Archers. Elbereth is the Sindarin name for... I can't remember her name. The Mistress of the Stars, the Goddess of the Heavens, the Wife of Manwë. Her name will probably come to me, but anyway, Elbereth is the Sindarin name for her, immortalised in the song O Elbereth Gilthoniel. But anyway, so that's where they get their name. But these are just your elite units, so 25 defense, which is very good, but from the Dwarven videos you'll note that that's nowhere near as good as the Dwarf elites, and it's also nowhere near as good as the High Elven elites. But their attack is 16, which is very savage indeed, and their charge is 8, which is very, very good to make up for it. But they do have no shield, so do watch out for arrow fire. No other bonuses to speak of except that they've got excellent morale, but they aren't locked. Their morale is not locked, so do bear that in mind. Then you have the guards. We'll get the guards up. So here you can see their defense is a lot better. The swordmen only had 25, but the spearmen have 32. They can hold on the battlefield for a very long time. And their attack is 14, which is very good for a spear unit, and a charge of 6, which is nothing to scoff at. They can make a shield wall, which is very useful at this higher level. It's very useful on the attack as well, as I'm sure you may have seen from some of my videos. They're adept at hiding in woods, and again, excellent morale. And they've got bonuses versus cavalry and whatnot. The archers are just elite archers, which is what you'd expect of elite archers. Very similar to the Rangers of Lothlórien, but with a higher defense. They've got less missile attack, so the Rangers are actually your best archer unit, the Rangers of Lothlórien. But the... Oh, no, sorry, the Galadhrim March Wardens are up there. But in terms of raw missile damage, the Rangers of Lothlórien are the best. But these guys, they have a 12 attack once they've finished firing their arrows. So, very similar to the Elbereth Swordmen, only 4 behind. So once they've actually finished their bows, they're very adept swordmen as well. So you can charge them in and rest assured that they're not going to be absolutely destroyed. They will hold their ground. They can use stakes again, adept at hiding in woods, and very good morale, not excellent morale. So do be cautious that the elves aren't as good. The elven archers don't have as high morale as the elven foot soldiers. Their accuracy is very high, range of 210, which is very good. The bodyguards are essentially the same as the Elbereth archers, save for their defense is higher, as you can see there. Still no shield, but their defense is up to 28. They've got less melee attack, but they have a better arrow attack. So your Elbereth sentinels, which are your bodyguard, and they wear the silver armor. They're better archers than Elbereth archers, but Elbereth archers are better fighters. Excuse me, sorry. That's just to obviously to highlight that Lothlórien's generals really are archers over swordmen. So the best archers that you can sort of get, aside from the rangers, are your bodyguards, but they're not your best fighters. And the final unit that you get as Lothlórien are the Galadhrim March Wardens. These are beasts. They are absolutely so overpowered, it's unbelievable. But they are incredibly rare and very, very expensive. They require one of the 2 regions that you start with at the beginning of the game, so either Cairn Amroth or Caras Galadhrim. They have excellent morale. It's not locked though, so do bear that in mind. They haven't got locked morale. Their armor class is obviously considered very heavy, because you can see there they've got 30 defense, with 15 of that in armor and 15 of that in defense skills. So they're susceptible to arrows again, but not that susceptible, because 15 armor is nothing to mock. Their melee attack is 15, but what isn't listed here is that their melee attack is effective against armor. So they are your troll killers. They are your anti-armor unit. They are Lórien's only anti-armor unit. So that's really your only weakness, is against the heavily armored trolls, or just really heavily armored units in general, especially if they have a shield, because they'll cut down your effectiveness with arrows. But their secondary attack of 15, which is phenomenal, and it's effective against armor, so they're so powerful when they do go into melee. And they've got a very good range with very high accuracy and 32 missiles, so it takes quite a while for them to get rid of their 10 attack stat arrows before they do draw out their dual sword thing. Now, some people have moaned about these swords because they're a bit Star Warsy and they're a bit fake and they're a bit too fantasy, but if you can't have fun with it, then what is the entire point in even existing? So if you don't like their swords, then just don't use them. I really like that sword. I think it looks really cool, and in battle they look like demons. Feel free to moan about it if you wish, but it shan't be changed. They're effective against cavalry as well. So Lórien's elite tier are all pretty good against cavalry. So in the later stages of the game, you don't really have too many threats, apart from, as I say, the heavily armoured units of some factions, such as the Olaghai. They'll give you a run for your money. And just generally, just trolls in general, really. Most heavily armoured infantry, whilst they will be a problem for you, you normally will have so many archers by that stage in the game that even though there'll be a problem, you will still be able to bring them down. So you don't have to worry too much about just general infantry, but do be cautious of trolls. Alright, so that's the Lórien faction. We'll do a little mock battle, as I say in every video, as I always do. There's some of our banner carriers. Oh, I can show you what our general looks like, actually. Which one is our general? Wrong one. This guy. There's your general at the back there. He is different from the... Oh, he's the captain, sorry. But he is different from the standard Lórien elite units, in that he has that sort of crown on his head instead of the helmet which the others have. He also has the armor style which is now used by Thranduil, but when Thranduil gets his updated look, he won't take that updated look. He'll always look like that, so he stands out. So that's what your captain looks like. He's also not likely to be the only guy with this massive spear in the unit, because the only other unit which has that huge spear are the Elbereth guards. But anyway, we're up against a force of the Misty Mountains. They've got some trolls in there. There's a unit in here which will be coming out in 0.52 or 0.6. If you do spot it, feel free to write that in the comments. There's a few extra units that will be added to the Orcs of the Misty Mountains, because we feel that their roster is one of the few left that doesn't really have that much variety, and they could do with a few extra little things just to pep them up, especially with Angmar getting the those Uber elites and the Rûdal units coming to Angmar almost solely. But whilst the Orcs of the Misty Mountains can train the Rûdal units, they're a lot rarer for them. We've got some of Bolg's champions at the end there, heavily armoured infantry on the old style warg. I don't think I've got any normal warg riders. There's some of the trolls, our greatest threat, crashing through the line there. And those are absolutely destroying our sentinels. Going to town on them, they're getting slaughtered. Oh, that was a volley fire from somewhere. Rûdal axemen hitting the sentinels the Vanna's chosen. Another wave of arrows comes in. The March Wardens are holding fair. Right, so we'll go up and down the line, and then we shall call it a day. Bolg's champions versus Elbereth swordmen. Now the champions did get that initial charge bonus, and they've cut us down to about 30 men. But on the field of battle with the charge taken out, the swordsmen will destroy them, which is why they're going to run away and charge again to get their charge bonus. There's two of Misty Mountain's most strongest units versus the guards. the spear elite. Fighting quite nicely there. Ivan has chosen keeping the enemy at bay with their glaive. I want to say glaive. I really don't know what a glaive is. To me, that's a battle axe or a pole axe. But there we are. It might be a glaive. Who knows? I'm not down with my medieval weaponry, I'm afraid. The Girthanen haven't been used. Let's charge them in. Get that extra charge bonus. They'll get slaughtered by the Black Uruks of the mountain. That won't even be a competition. Next up, more Rhuideau units versus the Lórien spearmen, and they've made those ones flee. Yes, Lórien sentries, chase after them. Have a look at our arrows. As our arrows fly, there's the basic Lórien archers. The elves obviously have a larger range than almost anyone you will come up against, so you must use that to your advantage, because the only way that the enemy will really kill your archers is with their own archers. So you do have to try and use your range to your advantage.
Perhaps our chances of victory with it.
As you can see from the dead bodies littered in front of the Galadhrim March Wardens, they are very susceptible to arrow fire, especially that unit over there that's shooting them with those volleys. They are armour piercing, so they will be doing a right number on them. And then finally the Rangers of Lórien with their cool shields on their back, getting the last arrows off. So that's the Lothlórien overview. The next one that I will do, I don't know when it will be, potentially at the weekend, will be Rohan, for those of you who have been asking me so much. I'd like to get Rohan out of the way now because I never play as Rohan, so I'll have to do a little bit of brushing up before the video.
Almost certain.
But I have played as Thranduil and Lórien a lot. Lórien are a very fun faction, but after the initial invasion they are quite easy, so do bear that in mind. You're not going to have a challenge. Well, you may have a challenge if the invasion takes Caras Galadhrim. You will have a huge challenge, but if it doesn't, then you'll be all right. But anyway, thank you very much for watching the video. I hope it's been enjoyable. Once again, if you have any questions or queries or qualms, do head to Total War Centre or ModDB, where we'll try and get in contact, where I can try and answer them as fast as I can. But for now, thank you very much for watching. Do subscribe if you enjoy these videos. I think there's another 9 faction overviews to do, 8 or 9, possibly 7. I can't remember. It's we're definitely below double figures now, so we're closing in, but we've still got about half to do. So I think it's around 9 or 8 or 9. Also, there's a few Let's Plays as well, but only you can obviously watch those if you find them enjoyable. If not, no worries. But for now, thank you very much for watching. I'm Arachír Galudirithon, the head of Divide and Conquer, and Navar Naden Pedimad. And farewell.